Session for today. So I'd like to welcome you all to our wrap-up session of our Connecting Together on Senior Social Isolation series. It has been a great conversation so far, and we look forward to continuing that conversation today. Again, just a reminder, please introduce yourself in the chat so we all know who we are connecting with. This session is being recorded, and the recordings will be sent out following the session. If you have questions for our presenter today, please do use the chat box, raise your hand, or if there is a moment to unmute and pose your question. I would just like to say a big thank you to everyone who has made this session possible. So I would like to start off by thanking Sheridan College. Sheridan College for hosting the event and all of the behind the scenes WebEx support. So big thank you to Kristen, as well to the Center for Elder Research, Lee Hayden. I would like to thank the steering committee, Ray Applebaum, Daniela Balasal, I'm sorry, I didn't check for pronunciation, Tina Hickey, Lorena Smith, Teresa Ho, and all the staff at the CRT in the region of Peel, including Carolyn Climo, Tracy Mendez, Donna Kern, Chandra Vadanathian, and Lynn Noor, as well, and Katie Sawyers. I would like to thank the planning team, who again volunteered their time to help bring this session together and bring all of us here. So thank you to Sean and Alyssa at Volunteer NBC, and a big shout out to them for all of the administrative work that they have done, getting Eventbrite and the slides. A big thank you to Sean and Alyssa at Volunteer NBC and the team over there. Thank you to Anna and Janet from the region of Peel, Danish from Indus Community Services, Denmeet from Punjabi Community Health Services, Natasha from Peel Senior Link, Renita from Acclaim Health, and myself from Seniors Life Enhancement Centers. We were your planning team, and we thoroughly enjoyed putting together this series for you. I would like to again, turn it over to Natasha Collins, who will be our moderator for today.
All right, thanks, Heidi. So today we are, actually, first off, we'll start with a land acknowledgement. So we would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we work, that we know as Peel, is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. For thousands of years, Indigenous peoples inhabited and cared for this land. In particular, we acknowledge the territories of the Anishinaabeg, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwe and Chippewa peoples, the land that is the home to the Métis, and most recently, the territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land, and by doing so, give our deepest respects to its first inhabitants. Okay, so today's session is communication and collaboration. We will have a keynote presentation followed by a facilitated question and answer period. And today we have Christine Chan from the University of Toronto, who will be presenting Getting Better at talking to older adults from other cultures. So Christine Chan is a Master's of Public Health and a PhD student from the University of Toronto. She was born in Malaysia, grew up in New Zealand, and lives in Toronto, Canada. She has over 21 years of experience working in health and community services for government, hospitals, and nonprofit organizations. She talks to older adults every day about their problems. Let's give a warm welcome to Christine.
Thank you so much, Natasha, and good afternoon, everyone. Just want to check that you can all see my screen, the slide deck in front of you. Is everything okay?
Looks great.
Okay, thank you. So again, good afternoon. My name is Christine Chan, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you today. I've taken a glance and seen, who's here and what organizations you're from, and I'm very excited. We have a lot of experience in the room. I really want to hear your views on cross-cultural communication. So this topic is dear to my heart. I try every day to get better at talking to older adults from different cultures. I know we've done a land acknowledgement, but I personally want to acknowledge that, I'm very grateful to have the privilege and opportunity to work on this land that's been home to Indigenous peoples for thousands of years. So I want to give my respect to the first people. A little bit about me. I was born in Malaysia. I grew up in New Zealand from 12 to 35. And then I've been living in Canada for about 11 years now. And my love for community work and public health started in 2002. I project managed a door knocking campaign on Maori and Pacific families, their households, their neighborhoods, during an epidemic in New Zealand. We had a meningitis epidemic. At that stage, we did not have a vaccine. So it was all about, don't share. We had this motto that was don't share spit. That was the motto in New Zealand. Yeah. But of course, culturally, a lot of people were upset with us. You're targeting, Maori and Pacific Island people. Who are you to tell us, we can't kiss our grandchild? Because meningitis was killing a lot of little babies and older adults. So it was my debut into cross-cultural challenges. I have a Master of Public Health, and now I'm a PhD student at U of T. I'm studying older adult suicide. I also have a daytime job at Elder Abuse Prevention in Ontario. But right now, of course, I'm not talking about elder abuse. I love talking about elder abuse. Right now, we're talking about cross-cultural communication. So I've had many awakenings in my life and about cross-cultural communication. My most recent awakening that made me just wake up to the fact that, hey, Christine, you need to start changing the way you communicate to older adults and to older adults from a different culture. And this is what happened. I'm going to call this man Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee is a real person, and he's now a family friend. A few years ago, I was explaining to Mr. Lee about the Ontario health system. And, I went on, and especially you guys know when you talk to anybody, but especially an older adult, you need a good length of time. So I always know when I speak to an older adult about anything meaningful, I need about an hour to an hour and a half. So 45 minutes into the conversation, I say, Mr. Lee, so I've explained to you, the benefits, Medicare, and the OHIP card, what that gives you access to, and then what is not included in the National Insurance Program. Do you understand what I just said, Mr. Lee? And there was silence. And throughout the 45 minutes, he was going, So I had to ask again, Mr. Lee, did you understand what I just said about the Ontario health system? He says, actually, not really. I think better, Christine, if you write down for me. You write down, and then you let me read. I use my Chinese dictionary, and then I read for myself. And I was horrified. I thought I was a good communicator. I thought, my gosh, I've been rambling on for 45 minutes, and that's the result. So I always remind myself from that awakening that the biggest problem that we have in communication often is the illusion that it's taken place. We think it's taken place because we think communication is about talking. When we interview candidates for jobs, we want to hear them talk. We think, wow, that Christine, she's good at communicating. No, communication is not just talking. It's about listening, understanding, hopefully mutual understanding, negotiating, discussing. That's what communication is. And I had forgotten that. And right now, I want to encourage you to also share with me about your roots. We have quite a number of people in the room, but if you wouldn't mind sharing yourself by just saying, where are you from and what cultures do you identify with? Can you pop that in the chat box, please? I'm just going to give you a few seconds to do that. Oh, where's my chat box gone? Here we go. I'm waiting to see your comments with anticipation. So where are you from and what cultures do you identify with? Oh, hi, Kathy. Kathy is a wonderful connector, sends all kinds of information that I need on older adult programs. Kieran's from India. Heidi's from rural Ontario. Renita's from Holland. Oh, wonderful. So Heidi's local, I guess. Janet's from England. Kinsey's from Kenya. Joelle is from I love this. And Jamie identifies as Chinese Canadian. Love it. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, how do we ask somebody where they're from? You know, here we are in a small group, so we can freely, and we're talking about cross-cultural communication, so you don't mind people asking you where you're from. But how do you ask someone where they're from without offending them? Can somebody give me some advice? Do you go out and just ask them where you're from? A lot of people actually ask me that, but how do you ask somebody where they're from? Can somebody give some advice? Oh, I like this. Jen says, what is your heritage? What is like that? I like that. What is your heritage? Oh, but what if they're not, what if they don't know what the meaning of heritage is? What if they don't know the meaning of heritage? What is your heritage? How can you ask somebody where they're from without offending them? Anybody? Oh, I like this. Cheryl, can you tell me about yourself? Jamie, that's great. Where is your hometown? But then they might also get a bit confused, right? Do you mean Peel, or I mean somewhere in Caledon, or do you mean, have you lived in Canada all your life? Wonderful. I ask, what's your background? I usually just share where I am from, Shan. Shan says, and you know, I do what Shan does. I share about where I'm from first, and then usually they'll open up and share. And usually I don't have to ask. So just because of my personality, I don't like to ask people because I'm scared they'll feel offended, but also because the types of things that I talk to older adults about are very personal things. So I don't want to throw the conversation off track by talking about their origin, their country of origin. So usually I'm just chatting with them and they will voluntarily share it. And if they don't, sometimes it's not relevant, right? Sometimes it doesn't matter. They're still a human being and I want to talk to them. So let's keep going. I also like to ask people, you know, how do I pronounce your name? I want to make sure that I'm saying your name correctly. For example, I met a woman, her name was Amanpreet. I said, I want to make sure I'm saying your name right. Is it Amanpreet? She said, yes. I said, wow, it's beautiful, Amanpreet. What does it mean? And she said, it's a name from India, and Aman means peace. And I really love that because in Malaysia, Aman means peace as well. So that was a nice way of getting to know each other. The outline of my talk today will be 6 parts. Why is this topic important? What do we know from research about this topic? What are the challenges some of us are facing with regard to this topic and cultural diversity? Then we're going to quickly remind ourselves how to talk to older adults. Then we're going to talk about how to communicate with older adults from a different culture. That will be the meat of this session. And lastly, we'll finish with a few tips on virtual communication. And I really would love for you to share with me by writing your comments in the chat box, which I will keep open because I love to hear your feedback. So we're here right now. Why is this topic important? You all know, because you're experts in working with older adults, number of older adults is increasing. But sometimes we don't really think about it that deeply. We don't realize 80% of that increase is in Asia and Africa. But after a second, you realize, of course, this makes sense because Asia and Africa are the 2 largest continents in the world in terms of population size. And only 10% of the increase in the number of older adults is from the developed world, including Canada. And also the other reason this topic is important is because older adults worldwide perceive and experience aging differently. And by perceptions, we mean images, stereotypes, the attitudes we have about old people and growing older. I don't personally like to say old people, but I know that older adults themselves like to say the old people, or people like to say, they say the old people, even, Canadians say that. The reason is because age is relative. Whether you're old or young, to me, is relative to my age. So I like to call people older adult or younger adults. I don't like to say you are young or you are old, or when I get old, when I get older. I like to use the relative term. Of course, the best term to use when you're talking to older adults is the term that they like. So I always check with them. Some people don't like to be called a senior. Some people don't like to be called, definitely don't like to be called elderly. And they think elderly is not them. It's those people over there in the nursing home. So it's interesting, even though you're talking to someone who you think is an elderly, they perceive elderly as another group. This is called othering. We other older adults because we don't feel like an older adult. I have a feeling that some of us in this room will not be able to, will not identify with the term seniors when we're in our 60s or 70s, because even today, our colleagues, our volunteers, they don't see themselves as a senior. And sometimes they call us, right? They call us to check, Christine, does your program have an age minimum? Because I'm in my late 50s or early 60s, I don't feel like a senior, but can I come? So I always say, if you feel you can benefit from an older adult session, you come. I go to older adult sessions myself to learn things, about estate planning, taxation and stuff, because I don't know those things. So if you think you can benefit, you come. So look at this thing that I've underlined here. Academics who study cross-cultural perception of aging, they say that culture, more than personal experiences of aging, has a greater influence on perceptions of aging. And perception is important because how our society perceives what we imagine about older adults is how we're going to treat them. If we imagine older adults are depressed and bored, we're going to treat them like that. We're going to think, what do you do all day? Because we think they're bored. But if we think older adults are wise and, full of skills to share and contribute, we're going to treat them differently. We're going to say, come and help us. Come and help us, come and give us some advice. So perceptions are culturally determined, and they can clash with people's personal experiences. And some people that we know, even maybe some people in this group, you guys are enjoying life as you're growing older. You're enjoying it. And you're wondering, why do people perceive aging so badly? Because I'm having the time of my life. Okay, so perceptions can vary, and they vary within the same culture over time. What is culture? I like this definition. Culture is a system of beliefs, values, and assumptions about life that guide behavior and are shared by a people. And some people like to give culture an image, and the image they like to give is an iceberg. We're coming to the iceberg soon, but on top of the iceberg, what we can see is called visible culture. And this is, you can see from someone's language, from the way I'm speaking, maybe you can tell, oh, she's got a bit of Malaysian, Chinese, and New Zealand. I don't know what you're hearing because I've stopped being able to control my accent. When I was younger, I could manipulate my accent a little bit more depending on the group. But now I've totally lost that ability. It just melts into my. So visible culture. We just need somebody to, Patrick, if you wouldn't mind muting yourself, that would be great. Visible culture is someone, you can see it, someone's language, they're speaking, the way they dress, their manners, what they're eating, those things we can see. So it's the top of the iceberg, holidays, what kind of music they listen to. You go to the park, you hear their songs, you see their food and so on. what we can't see is even bigger than the top of the iceberg. We can't see the values, beliefs, and assumptions about, you know, how they view cooperation. If they're from a hierarchical society, they want to follow a leader, someone of authority. Or if they have a big power distance in their society, then they may not want to hear information from somebody like me, a younger girl. You know, like sometimes when I show up, they'll be like, oh, they sent a young one. And I say to them, I'm 46. Do you think how old do I need to be able to share this information? So it's very interesting. Different cultures have a different perception, and some of them feel a little put off when it clashes with their deep cultural values. This is one that I like, is the Indian cultural iceberg. Somebody actually dared to do one. If I really would love for a Canadian person, well, I guess I'm Canadian, but somebody needs to do a Canadian cultural iceberg. See, this Indian one is interesting. You know, you can see, you know, that someone is probably Indian if they eat tandoori chicken and tikka masala. They celebrate Diwali. But what you can't see is the gender roles that they ascribe to, that they subscribe to. You know, usually mothers, grandmothers, and older siblings care for infants. Patriarchal families are the norms. You see right in the middle of the deep culture iceberg, age is seen as an achievement and often linked to high status. I hope this is still so in the Indian culture, because in the Chinese culture it's definitely eroding, even though we are all trained from a young age to respect older people for sure. It is eroding. I have had some Indian students from India last year, and they couldn't come from India, so I taught them online. And we were talking about our fears about coronavirus. And they said to me, our fear is fertility. I said, fertility what? They said, fertility. And they say, ma'am, over here, we are worried that COVID is going to affect the male fertility. And I was like, wow, that's so interesting, because in Canada, you don't see anybody worried about coronavirus causing fertility issues. And you don't see people talking about the vaccine as a possible fertility threat. So it's really interesting to see culture. So remember, guys, visible culture is only what we can see at the top, and then less visible. Look at the huge iceberg at the bottom that we're not seeing. And of course, we don't want to stereotype people. There's also people's personality, their life journey, what they've been exposed to, that affects them. So you can't just typecast somebody off that they're a certain culture. I love this woman. She teaches people how to be accustomed to Canada. So she has these YouTube videos, and she said, when you talk to new people in Canada, don't discuss health problems, money, salary, religion, age, children, marriage, and politics. I did not have this list when I came to Canada. And by force of my personality and my interests, I love people. I violated a lot of these. I want to ask you guys, in our jobs with older adults, what do you guys hear us ask older adults that sometimes, you know, it's off limits? Are there any topics that we should not be asking older adults about? Are there any questions that we often ask older adults that are not necessary, inappropriate, or rude? Share your comments with me in the chat box, and I'll have a little drink with my little panda here. Or do you think it's fine to talk about anything? Everyone's thinking. I think people are thinking. How about maybe questions about children? I love this. Questions about children. Somebody has written, Sean. They don't often have them, and sometimes they're strange from, yeah, sometimes it's a point of pain. Their children, I'm not even calling them, so you keep asking them about their children. It's hurtful, or sometimes they don't have children, they've never been married. Sometimes people have regrets, or they might be mourning a miscarriage even from 50 years ago, or more than that. Joelle says, I'll follow their line of conversation. If they bring something up, I will engage. That's also smart. You hook onto something they mention, and then you ask them the question. Sometimes we want to know if they have family help or support, Wendy says, perhaps from the adult children, but that's sensitive. Yeah, the way that we ask that question is very important. We want to know who's supporting them, who's looking after them, but we have to be so careful. Jamie says sex and intimacy. That's interesting. I laugh because when I have talked about those issues, I have never initiated those issues. They will bring it up, maybe about the conditions in which they have to arrange opportunities for sex and intimacy. And usually it will start with a joke, you know, that they make. It may be more important about how questions are asked. Yes, Heidi is so right. How we ask the questions and what are asked. I also like to suggest that we only ask questions that are relevant and that we need to ask in order to provide the best service. There are times that I have heard colleagues or colleagues or volunteers asking, you know, oh my gosh, your house is amazing. How much did you pay for this house? You know, just things like that, you know. And also, I also find that we ask older adults about their age far too often. Yes, maybe at the beginning of the program, you want to find out, you want to take their demographic information, but we ask them about their age all the time, even if we don't really need to know the specific age. And then another one that we like to ask older adults is, you know, Marianne, are you okay? I've heard people ask this. A lot of us carers, we do that. And the way that we ask it is so important, because that person is thinking, okay, you think I'm not okay, you think I'm crazy. So the way that we ask that question, Marianne, are you okay? Maybe that's a bit different way to ask it. Definitely there are many different ways, like, you know, I've noticed, Marianne, you're a bit focused on something. Is something upsetting you? So what's the big deal of about cross-cultural communication in Peel? I don't have to tell you, because you know this. You know Peel is a major settlement destination for newcomers. We are an immigrant majority population, and immigrants account for just more than half of Peel's population. I love this table from, it's got the census data, 2016 census. You see in Peel at the left, gray column, you can see the birthplace of the immigrants in Peel. A lot of immigrants are born in India, Pakistan, Philippines, Jamaica. And then you have a melange, a mixture of people from China, Poland, UK, Sri Lanka, Portugal, Guyana. And then you go to the different areas within Peel, and you see Caledon is quite different actually from Brampton. It's got India, Italy, United Kingdom, Portugal, Poland. So immediately when you see these people, you know that our organization or my team or myself, we cannot be serving all these people alone. We need to collaborate. We will never have the staff workforce to serve the diverse community that we are living in. Because even if you have people from India, Pakistan, Philippines, and Jamaica in your organization, you know some of them have strengths in organization or running a Zoom meeting. They may not be the counselor type. They may not be the best person to be doing an intake form. They may not be a friendly caller type person. So we need to collaborate to make sure we have all the skill sets, and that we can have as many cultural brokers as possible, cultural brokers. Right now, many of us, we have our personal Rolodex, right? You have your personal contact list. You know, you can call Jamie if you need somebody who speaks Cantonese, maybe. You know, you can call Christine if you've got a Malaysian client. But that's all not on a systematic, coordinated basis. I suggest that we need that community asset map of different cultural brokers from different agencies, so that we can call people and say, you know, Shan, I need help. You know, Kiran, I need help. I have an Indian family here. I think that if you came with me or you talked to them with me, they will be more open. So next on the menu is what do we know from research? And the best thing I like to talk about is what do we not know about from research? So let's start with what we do know. There are many theorists, academic researchers on cross-cultural communication. One of the big ones is Dr. Geert Hofstede. I know we have at least one Dutch person in here. He was a social psychologist and he passed away sadly last year. He talked about the 6 dimensions of culture. And one dimension he mentions is that some cultures are very achievement oriented. And you can think immediately which country comes to mind. You know, they love the self-made person. You know, they worship the people who have, you know, gone there and done big things, achievement-oriented societies. Some other cultures don't like this. New Zealand, by the way, we have something called the tall poppy syndrome. Poppies are, you know, flowers. If you are a tall poppy and you are extraordinary, we're going to chop you down. We don't like the tall poppy. We're egalitarian. So you'll know that New Zealanders are they self-denigrate, you know, yeah, whatever, you know, I'm a professor, but you know, they're very down to earth because they don't want to come across as the tall poppy. So we're definitely not achievement oriented in New Zealand, although of course we have a lot of achievers and achiever icons in New Zealand. Other cultures may ascribe status. So you think about, I have to say, you know, Asian countries, some of our Asian countries, and again, I'm speaking very broadly. Obviously, there's no such thing as a glob of countries called Asian countries. There's so much diversity. But some countries some societies ascribe status. They give you status automatically because you come from a well-known family, or your mother was a well-known teacher or businessman or a doctor. They ascribe you status straight away because you're from that caste, you're from that group. So you get it. Even though you haven't done anything, you get status. I like what he talks about. He talks about collectivistic cultures and individualistic cultures. So collectivistic cultures are cultures that care about the group. They're very consensus oriented, care about group harmony, and like to negotiate with each other and get to a place where everybody's on the same page. Individualistic cultures are cultures where the individual is important, you know, your rights as a person, you know, and so Canada and US, they somewhat fit in the individualistic group, but of course, these groupings are contentious. There are other theorists who say, you know, the US isn't individualistic, it's tribal. So anyway, according to Dr. Hofstede, individualistic cultures like Canada and United States are usually quite young cultures. If you think about this, can somebody tell me how old Canada is? And can somebody write down how old the United States of America is? Just roughly. I mean, we're talking about, you know, compared to like India and China, where it's 2500 BC old, you know, India and China are about 2500 BC old communities. Does anybody know how old Canada is? We know because remember we all celebrated it a few years ago. Oh, thank you, Jen. Jen gets a chocolate fish in New Zealand when you're a good girl. I shouldn't have assumed your sexual orientation, but in New Zealand, you get a chocolate fish from your teacher if you answer a question correctly. So yeah, so Canada is 153 years old, and is US older than us? How old is the US? Oh, thanks, Chan. So the US is about 244 years old. So they're young communities. And when you think of Canada, we are not only young, but in Toronto and Peel, we are the most multicultural area in the world, apparently. So we have not only a young society, but a diverse and young society. So we need time, not like the Indians and the Chinese folk. They have had generations upon generations of negotiating, getting to know each other, knowing all the different groups. And so when you communicate in a collectivistic older culture like India and China, you can say something, they get it. They get the superstition you're talking about. They get the belief system. They get that whole male fertility. They get it. So that's called high context communication. Everyone understands the context. In low context communication, societies like Canada, we're still young, we're still getting used to each other, and we need to explain more. So what does this mean? It means that communication will be even more exhausting in Canada because you need to explain more, you need to talk more, and thank you for your comments. I'm following the comments. Yeah, so it's going to take more work for us in Canada because we're in an individualistic, diverse society. Dr. Franz Trompenaers is another theorist. He says that culture is like an onion. See this onion? I like to use visual aids when I talk to older adults, and it's also fun. But I just have to smell the onion. This one's lost the smell. But he says that if you peel the onion, you get the deeper layer is the norm and values, and basic assumptions that people have are values that have become norms. And he also talks about the 7 dimensions of cross-cultural communication. One that I want to point out is universalistic versus particularistic. So universalistic are societies where they think ideas and practices can be applied wholesale. Everybody gets applied the same rules. These cultures, they like one formal set of rules for everybody. And what country comes to mind? Can somebody type in the country? Somebody will know this. What is the generalization? Which country comes to mind? Everybody gets the same thing. It starts with F. Universalism. There's one country that value stands strongly. So the country is? People are still thinking. Okay, yes, Sean, France is the country. The French people are known for being very universalistic. Particularistic is when societies say, you know, we need to look at different circumstances and we need to think, do these ideas and practices work for these different circumstances? So he likes to, this guy, Dr. Trompenaers, likes to group people according to his little theory. Another person who has come up with a theory is Dr. Stella Ting Toomey. Oh, Sharon says, give me a chocolate fish. Give me a chocolate fish. I love it. I love it. Okay, Dr. Stella Ting Toomey, she came up with face negotiation theory. You know, when you talk about face, people think you're talking about Asia. Specifically, they think you're talking about Oriental people like me. But actually, Dr. Stella Ting Toomey says that whatever culture you come from, we're all in the business of managing our faces. Face is your social status and your image. And she talks about 3 types of stages that we have as humans. The first one, she says, is we are always aware of face-threatening circumstances, circumstances that will erode our face, our image. And if our face has been threatened and we suffer a loss of face, then we're in the business of face recovery. She talks about face recovery. And sometimes we do this for ourselves. Oh my gosh, you know, I made a fool of myself. I have to recover my face. So in Chinese culture, we will be doing a lot for whoever we dishonored or embarrassed. We'll be doing a lot for them for years, just to earn our face back. And the other thing is, if we destroy somebody else's face and erode somebody else's face, like Natasha, then I have to try to recover Natasha's loss of face. And then the other thing that Dr. Ting Toomey says is that most of the time, we are in the business of face maintenance. Now, you all have experienced this because we all go through so many service provider meetings. You see face management going on all the time. People are maintaining their face. So that's her theory, face negotiation theory. Duprow and Warfield, I love how they describe different cultural differences. They talked about 6 different communication styles. People have different attitudes towards conflict, different approaches. Some cultures, they avoid conflict. Some cultures, they face it straight and, they want to talk about it. Some cultures have different approaches. Cultures have different approaches to completing tasks, different decision-making styles, different attitude towards disclosure, how much they want to share about themselves, and different approaches to knowing. Different approaches to knowing is important for us because what are we doing as service providers? We're always telling them stuff. We're telling them stuff all the time. And I can tell you my father, who is a 78-year-old Malaysian man, that's not all he is. I've just told you his age and his cultural grouping. He is so much more than that, right? And that's what we have to remember when we label people. We don't just go with 2 little tiny details that we say, 78-year-old Malaysian man. But in this case, I just want you to understand that my father, if I share with him anything about Ontario or Canada, he doesn't want to hear it from me. He wants to hear it from an authority figure, from Doug Ford. Because when I say to him, Dad, you have to do that, he goes to me, how you know? How you know? Because in his mind, I am not the person to communicate to him on these things. We all have to be on guard for ethnocentrism. I can't say this word. I'm so sorry. It's ethnocentrism. We try to not be ethnocentric. Ethnocentric is when I think my culture is the best, and I'm going to judge your culture from the lens of my culture. I'm going to judge your culture from my culture. My culture is best. So we have to watch that. The other thing that we know from research is aging. It's so sad. There's only like 3 different models of aging because because our imagination of the aging process is so poor. A long time ago, well, not so long time ago, 1961, there was a disengagement theory. Aging was seen as a time where you disengage from the mainstream society. That has been discredited. Now, the model that we usually hear about in society is the biomedical model. We think aging is a health thing, and it uses a deficit model. So it talks about what we can't do anymore, the functions that you lose, and age is on the decline. This is why health professionals, they love to use this, which I so hate. They say that the silver tsunami is here. The silver tsunami, that is a natural disaster coming to overwhelm and kill us. That is the thinking that is widespread today. We need to stop looking at older adults as high risk, high cost, and we need to have different imagination on aging. So right now, there's a lot of people who, actually, some of you have been working on this for ages, and I want to thank you because I'm jumping on that bandwagon of positive aging, aging well, seeing aging as maturing. We're still growing. There's still things to do. There's still things to learn. Reading Shan's comment about what Jester. Thanks, Shan, for your comments. Wait a minute. I love lemurs. Look at this lemur. He's got such attitude. Wait a minute. What kind of people were studied? Guess what kind of people that usually get studied, guys? What kind of people get studied? Is it the Malaysians or Jamaicans? No. It's so there was a scoping review last year, 2020. They did a worldwide search of all the studies on self-perceptions of aging and being older, and they said that many of these studies are missing non-Western cultural perceptions. So we don't actually know, other than you and me, we work with a lot of older adults from different places. They don't actually know systematically. We've never studied them to understand how they experience aging. So a lot of our research is biased. So what must we do? Thank goodness, people are not without good ideas. I love these ideas in the Supporting Cultural Diversity report. Number 1, train staff on cultural competence and cultural safety. Oh, for Zana, loves this report. Me too. In New Zealand, where I come from, cultural safety is mentioned all the time. When I entered the health system in New Zealand as an employee, I was I did the Treaty of Waitangi training. I went to the whares, you know, the little, I had to immerse myself so that I become safe for the Maori people to relate to. I don't want to erode their dignity. And so we talk about cultural safety all the time. In Canada, we are not quite there yet. Number two, we need to know about cultural values, traditions, and beliefs in a very general way. And remember, we want to know in a very general way because we want to give people the opportunity to show themselves who they are from their life experience, their personality, not just slap them with a cultural label. Three, we need to support staff in getting to know older adults better. This one, we need time. We need time. And a lot of our agencies, you know, they're calculating our time. You know, you spend more than 20 minutes on a phone call, they're like, we're so efficiency driven that we don't have time to get to know our older adults. And often a lot of us are doing it in our own time, right? Number four, and this is so important, I do not have the expertise in this area, and I really welcome some of you who do to rise up and give us the roadmap. We need to address and resolve intercultural conflicts among older adults and the people who care for them, and address racism. You know, we have this. We have this in our senior centers. We have it in our long-term care homes. Seniors being racist towards each other, being racist towards the workers. I get it myself. You know, they don't want, sometimes they don't want the information from me. They disrespect what I represent. Some male older adults, they don't respect me. So I really feel for a lot of carers, a lot of personal support workers who get racist remarks every day from the people that they're trying to care for. It's a big deal, and in our work, I find this is denied or minimized. So steps from moving from a fake monocultural mindset that we're in. We're all in this fairy tale land of monocultural. We think we're all Canadians. Let's get together, you know. But it's not really a melting pot. We are different pots in all over Ontario. So Mitchell Hammer, Dr. Hammer says there are these general stages. Number one, first of all, a society will deny that there's diversity. We're all the same anyway. Number two, they'll say that they'll polarize cultures. You know, that culture, very strange. It will not gel with our culture, very strange. So we polarize the cultures. Then the third one is minimize it. Okay, there's many different types of people, but what difference does it make? Does it make a difference? Does it make an impact? We're serving all these different people. Let's just serve them the same program. We minimize the impact of culture. Number four, we move to an acceptance, a place where we accept, oh boy, okay, we've got diversity, we're bound to have conflict, we're bound to have misunderstandings, what do we do? And then, according to Dr. Hammer, we have to move to adaptation. And this is very difficult. We have to work together. This is why this session is called communication and collaboration. No one agency, no one person, or no one team, no single team has all the answers. We have to collaborate because we need all the cultural perspectives that we can to develop the collective solutions or approaches. Challenges some participants are facing. Thank you so much for those of you who shared your challenges. A lot of us are still grappling with the complex information, not only on coronavirus, but on the vaccines and the effects and so on. So imagine having to communicate to our older adult clients on this when we are grappling with complex information ourselves. Cultural complexity, a lot of us are already overwhelmed. There's so many different cultural lenses and beliefs. Where do I start? I suggest you start with understanding your own culture. We understand our own culture, where my values, beliefs, and assumptions come from. And then it's a very good starting point. And then be open for people to present themselves and have a general sense for the cultural groupings. Access to resources, people are saying, oh my gosh, this is, we've been talking about this since the cows came home, lack of materials in diverse languages. Other than English and a few other languages, there's so few resources available and sometimes not in the right format. A lot of our older adults can't read. So you produce all the brochures you want in all these languages, but they don't read it. But they'll collect it. They like to collect it, right? They'll collect it, They're not reading it. I have been looking for YouTube videos in which seniors are speaking, and they're speaking. I want to hear the accent. I want to see the cultural diversity, and I want to hear the different sentence structure. A lot of our YouTube educational materials are still of Canadian-speaking people talking to older adults of different cultures. We need all the different accents we can. If you are somebody who is very conscious about your accent and your culture, rise up. You may be the only person that some seniors can understand and receive information from. So be proud of your accent, because some people will really connect with your accent. They get the information, they get it in the sentence structure that they like. Other challenges that people have talked about is gaining trust and not having time. Let's do some general reminders on how to talk to older adults, because a lot of us are thrown into this job and nobody checked out on whether we were good at talking with older adults, right? Actually, I should rewrite this and say how to talk with older adults. We're not just talking to, how to talk with older adults. So prepare to talk to them. A lot of the time we get used as service providers, we get used to labeling them with an age. You know, I have a 79-year-old woman from Pakistan, and we just given our colleague 2 bits of information, 79 and from Pakistan. We don't talk about the other stories that come with these people. You know, she's a great grandmother. She loves music. She loves singing. She's great at cooking. She's very kind. She's sewing things for the poor. We need to hear people explained in greater depth so that we don't objectify them. We are already so good at objectifying older people. I suggest also that we start thinking about not calling our meetings seniors meetings. Some of my seniors that I know well, they say, Christine, can you please just call us adults or just call us people? Stop saying older adults. You're with older adults, just call them people. So, I mean, that was very good feedback for me. As I said, some older adults do not consider themselves older adults. They may switch off, or they think this meeting is not for me. Or worse still, they think it's for the elderly. So the way I always say to seniors is, you know, I'm not sure if you consider yourself an older adult or senior, but I am running this session. I'm running the session. We'll be talking about this. If you think you can benefit, come along. We'll have a wide range of people, probably between 60 and 100. This is what I usually say to them. How to talk to an older person, greet them properly. A lot of you already do this. Tone of voice, somebody mentioned in the audience. Use plain language. Let's not try to impress older adults with our verbose language. Does this situation sound familiar to you guys? This is my friendly Lima. Lima with attitude. We sometimes can treat older adults as invisible. You're talking to an older adult, their adult child comes into the room. What happens? Or your colleague comes in, Natasha comes in. You can share your feelings in the chat box, but I won't read them out to save time. What happens when we talk to an older adult and then a colleague enters the same room or their adult child? What happens? Can somebody share in the chat box? Sometimes we start ignoring the older adult and we start talking about them, right? We start talking about them without involving them. And sometimes automatically we start treating them like a child. It's like their minder has entered the room, or, you know, we professionals are here now. And then we start talking about them like they're not very smart. Consider bringing a prop. I love bringing props and I love bringing them for Zoom meetings. I say, Mr. Lee, you can't read my text because your light in your bedroom is too dim. Why don't you buy this light? You see, you just tap it, it's wireless, you carry it around anywhere in your house. Consider bringing a prop. It also makes it interesting to them because most adults, not only older adults, do not want to be lectured to for an hour, but we still do that, right? We do that in our programs. We tell them to save their questions till the end, and we hold them as Zoom hostages till the end, and then we go, have you got anything to say? And they're tired. By that time, they're tired. So engage them. Use your face and your body. Check for hearing and vision loss. A woman once said to me, Christine, your session's so good. I say, wow, really? I said, which part did you like? She says to me, actually, I didn't bring my hearing aids. So I missed a lot of it. So I said, what did you like about it? She said, I liked to be with the group. And I realized some of them are just hanging out because we're doing our work, right? We're speaking to older, we're doing work, we're doing our Zoom meeting, we're doing our work. They are doing life. They're coming to our sessions to give them life. So we have to remember that check for vision loss, check for hearing. How do you check with someone if they have a hearing problem? Can somebody share in the chat box? How do you, because you obviously don't want to say, hey, are you deaf? How do you check with somebody if they have a hearing problem? Feel free to hear in this. Ask questions, yeah, sure. But what if they can't hear you? Then they just look, Can everyone hear me? Great. Natasha saying, can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me? You can ask, can everyone hear me? Yep, that's great. Okay, you can also say, let me know if I'm not speaking clearly or you can't hear me properly. Also, when you speak to older adults, a lot of them are reading your mouth, right? So don't cover your mouth, obviously. And okay, and then you say, can I do anything to help prepare for the conversation? I know some people wear hearing aids or glasses. Do you? Wendy's got great suggestion. Is that something I can do? That's good. Thank you, Wendy. Obviously, speak up, but do not shout. I have to control my volume because I'm from a Malaysian culture. We like to shout. And if you don't shout in my family or my relatives, nobody will hear you. So I really have to control myself, but because I get excited, I start shouting. Speak up, but don't shout. Speak slowly and clearly. Listen to them. Listening feels like love. You know, the last time somebody really listened to you, you thought they loved you because listening feels like love. Katie said, reduce background noise. Absolutely. I like silence. I prefer silence. I don't have any music when I'm with seniors. Complete silence. I like to remind myself, most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. So if you're talking, if you're listening just because you're waiting for a chance to talk, you're not really listening. You're not really listening. So sometimes it's just good to just be quiet. Be quiet. For talkers like myself, I have to actually restrain myself from talking. And I can tell you guys that I did that by training myself to count. I count till like 7, like this, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's how I trained myself to, because it was so automatic. Like I keep saying, oh yeah. And you know, I start disrupting the conversation. So I train myself to be quiet. Reminders, a lot of seniors love reminders. They like you to summarize as you go along. Give them reminders, maybe write them a note or leave a voicemail with a reminder because they can listen to your message over and over again. I always say to them, I'm going to call you again, Betty. I'm going to call you. I'm going to leave you the instructions again so you can listen to your voicemail. Don't answer. I'm going to call you now. So you leave them a reminder. Tips on communicating with people from other cultures. Listen to them and then repeat what you thought they said. This is wonderful because it's so affirming when somebody repeats to you what you just said. So if Jen is saying, my grandmother was notorious. Let's see what Jen's saying. My grandmother was a notorious nod and smile. She had to be asked a specific question that required an answer. Absolutely. So Jen, so if I was talking to Jen and I repeated, wow, Jen, so your grandma, she was the quiet type. You'd think that she was with you, and then you realize she may not by asking her a specific question. So repeat back to them so they think, oh yeah, Christine, my gosh, you get what I'm saying. You repeat. This is called reflection, right? Or mirroring in counseling. You mirror to them what they just said to you. Obviously, don't do it in a robotic fashion, but rephrase it. You know, I hear what you're saying. You're saying that, wow, you have a big family and there are all kinds of people in the family. Repeat it back. It builds rapport. And it also makes sure that you are on track. Because they might say, no, actually, you got it wrong. And please, no one-way monologues. The way that I did to Mr. Lee, a lot of us are doing to our older adults. We're doing it to Jen's grandmother. They're going, And we're just talking because we think we're great communicators, we're talking. So remember, talking is not just, communication is not talking. Prepare before you communicate. I always research where somebody is from, roughly, because I sometimes get it wrong, right? You don't want to ask somebody from Pakistan, are you from India? So you prepare. And the best thing I have found is I have my own little Rolodex, my own group of cultural brokers that I like to call. I will call Sean. I'll call somebody and go, what, this person's name is, Amanpreet Kaur. What do you think? What is their background? I want to make sure that I approach them respectfully. So someone from that culture will immediately tell you generally what the guidelines are. Learn from generalizations, but don't use them to stereotype people. None of us like to be stereotyped just because I think one of us said that we're Dutch. You don't want to be thinking, oh, that person is this kind because they're Dutch. We want to generally know what Dutch people are like, but we want to give her space to be herself. Isn't it wonderful? We don't draw a line around people. We give them space to present themselves. Prepare before communicating. Understand your own culture, your own biases. Park them so that you can really listen with a clear head. Practice. When the first time you're exposed to different cultures is scary, you're in a room and there are a whole lot of Chinese folks looking at you or a whole lot of Indian people looking at you, and you're like, oh, I don't know what to say. Keep practicing, and then you'll love it. You'll love it because you'll love diversity and it makes life fun and interesting. So if somebody says, Wendy, would you like to speak to our Somali friends? Of Somali families, you say, I don't know much about Somali culture, but yeah, I would. And then have a chat with the interpreter or a Somali colleague. Avoid slang. A lot of us like to say quick and dirty. I'm going to give you a quick and dirty on what, some cultures, they don't like to hear that word dirty. So I like to say quick and clean. Quick and clean. Paraphrase what you say. I usually talk like this, and you know what? My husband says I'm the queen of repetition. Am I actually not repeating? So I will say, I love this cup that I got from Korea. It's got a panda on it. You see, this panda is so cute. And then I'll say, this cup, it's made in Korea, yeah, I bought it from Korea. I'll say it again. Love it. Because my sister used to live in Korea. I visited her. I bought this cup from Korea. I have said it about 2 or 3 times. And maybe on the second or third time, somebody from another culture, they get it, they hear it. What about volume? Can somebody share with me in the chat box, should we be speaking up or maintaining normal volume? I don't know about you guys, but I seem to do better if I change volume. Sean, how to change volume down or up? Sean, you may have right now normal volume. Go normal volume. Oh, Sean is like, oh my goodness. So yeah, he's saying change volume. Interesting. Pronounce clearly. Yeah. I find speak clearly at a normal volume. Yeah. Again, I have to control myself. I tend to speak louder, and like Jen said, don't assume hearing impairments. It can be very rude for people like me to be speaking so loudly to people. I'm so used to it in my family that if I don't speak loudly, nobody will hear me. Jacqueline, thank you. Jacqueline tends to yell. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. Okay, beware of facial expressions. A lot of us have never seen ourselves until the advent of Zoom. And now we see ourselves on video. We're like, oh my gosh, is that what I look like? It's actually a good thing. You can see whether you're friendly. Are you smiling? Are you friendly? Are you approachable? Because some of us have never seen ourselves before. We don't realize maybe we got a grumpy face. So, and then watch your body language. How many of us like to stand over older adults? We do this all the time. We're talking over them. It's so rude. I mean, you imagine starting talking to you. We do that all the time. We talk standing up. Try and sit down. Or, but if you're presenting, some cultures need you to stand up to show respect. So do what is appropriate and really look at their faces. When you start looking at people's faces, you can see, that's why I like to have them on video on Zoom. I can see their faces and I'll say, oh, Henry, you look like you're thinking really hard. You've got something to say? Or I'll say, oh, Renita, you're laughing. And that's all I have to say. And then Renita will say, I'm laughing because write things down. Write things down because they'll go away and they'll ask somebody to, read it, or they'll study it. They'll look up their dictionary. Write things down for them. Don't be lazy, get an interpreter. So many of us, we have interpretation services, but we don't get the interpreter. How many hospital staff have not got interpreters because they're like, Maria, have you had your pain medication? And I'm thinking, Maria doesn't understand English. She understands Italian. But the social worker or the nurse cannot be bothered getting the interpreter on the phone, which they have access to 24/7. What happens when you ask somebody like Jen's grandma, did you understand what I just said? They usually will go, We need to check for understanding by asking open questions. I want to ask a question in the chat box. What about humor? Do you guys use humor and joke with people from another culture? Sean and I are the same. I never use humor because at one stage, at a Zoom meeting with 20 adults, okay? And then Mr. Ali says to me, Christine, you're not reading my questions. I write in chat box, you're not reading my questions. I said, Mr. Ali, I'm not seeing your questions. And I look at it, I was like, where are your questions? And then Diane pops up. Diane said, Ali, you are writing chat comments to me. You need to write chat comments to everyone. Then you know what? I thought it was a funny moment. I say, Ali, nice try. You have a private conversation with Diane, right when I'm having my group meeting. And you know what? Mr. Ali didn't laugh. I thought it was funny. He didn't laugh. So do you guys use humor? Sean, why don't you use humor? Sean says he doesn't use humor. Agnes says saying simple and slow. I was using it in my response. Never. Okay. Does anybody use humor with the older adults? Who's doing it successfully? I need to learn because I like to have fun. Very carefully. Wendy says very carefully. Usually once I know it will be well received and appreciated. Oh yeah, sarcasm is lost in translation of yes, I never speak sarcastically. So I tend to not, if I know their humor. Yeah, I also tend to not use humor. I'm going to speed through because I see that I'm running out of time. Remember, summarize as you go, write it down, be aware of unique personality and culture, not only cultural background. People have preferred ways of communication. Some people like you to write it down. They like to hear it. They like to see it. So we're almost there. I want to ask you guys quickly, common scenario in our sessions with older adults. You know, some participants, they can't stop talking and they're dominating the whole meeting. They're always answering you. You ask a question, Mary will answer. You ask something, Mary will answer. And then the quieter ones are not answering. And some, you notice that the quieter ones are from minority cultures. So what do you guys make of this situation? How do you understand the situation and how can you improve it? Can somebody share with me in the chat box? Heidi says, ask direct questions to specific people. So Heidi, I do that too, but I have found out that some people really get offended that you put them on the spot. They're like, Christine, because they feel stupid. Maybe they feel like they have nothing to contribute. So why are you picking on me? The shy ones will wonder, why are you calling me out? I mean, Linda's not speaking. Brent is not speaking. Why you ask me? Frizana says, have breakout sessions where small groups, yeah, that's great. Have small groups have the opportunity to talk to each other, so break them up. This is such a common scenario, right? You have a few loud, chatty people. In some cultures, people feel uncomfortable with silence, so they like to speak when there's a point of silence. In other cultures, it's customary to wait to speak. So they wait for a moment of silence. But if there's no moment where no one is speaking, they may never get to speak. And then for some people, they don't speak up. because they have internalized messages from society that my contribution is not as important as other people. My late mother used to be like this. She thought that, you know, whatever I have to say is not as interesting as maybe other people. So what do? At certain times, I'll say, I'm going to ask everybody this. Everybody, I'm going to give you a chance. If you don't want to answer, don't worry. Pass on to the next person. Just say pass. You know, what are you going to do this weekend? Summer has just started. What are you going to do? Okay, then you go through each person. Follow a guideline where everyone speaks once before anyone speaks twice. So I say, okay, who hasn't spoken here? Who are the quieter ones who hasn't spoken? I just want to give you a chance to speak if you want to. Give you a chance to speak if you want to. You can also invite the quieter people that you know to lead something. Some of the quiet people, they have, you know, very interesting skills and information or knowledge about something. Jen is asking a question. Christine, have you found improvement in quiet people sharing their thoughts when using Zoom because of the chat box or less? The quiet people when using Zoom because of the chat box of improvement in quiet people sharing their thoughts. So Jen, I don't use the chat box with older adults. Generally I don't, because I want them to see each other's faces. I love to have them trained with all having their videos on, but I also have phone only groups. So I don't like to have too many modes going at the same time. I find it hard to keep up. And so I assume that simpler is better, because I'm dealing with cultural diversity and difficult topics. I don't want to, but I do have the chat box available if people want to. So yes, there are some quiet people who will only type. They will only type. So do have that available. Talk about the problem. Sometimes you talk about the problem, you know, at this session, some people spoke more than others. At the next session, I would love to hear from the people who didn't speak as much. Okay, tips for, this is my last 2 slides, group communication by Zoom. Have someone chair the meeting. Have a different person do the technology bit. Oh, this is by phone. If you have an all phone group, the first thing you need to teach them obviously is how to mute and unmute all of it. Some of you already know this. You have been through the teething pain, how do I say that? The teething pains? I feel like my English is still catching up to me. How to unmute and mute. But once they have learned, respect them as adults. They can all mute and unmute themselves. They just have to be taught how to do it. And there's some beautiful technology where you can also put them in a queue, like on a radio talk show. You can put them on a queue and then they wait to speak. And then you tell them, I'm going to mute you if there's noise, okay? So that people don't feel offended, because initially people used to say, hey, you cut me off. And I say I have to for the welfare of the whole group. Rename people as soon as they join, because you don't want to be calling people by their phone number. The person on 416-666, what are you saying? You want to rename them. Allow time at the beginning and the end of the group for people to greet each other. Remember, they are doing life. We're doing work, they're doing life. So let them express themselves. They are interested more in the other people, you know, people who are like them at home, living as an older person, trying to find new meaning in life, pursue their interests. Give them time to greet each other. So I like to say at the end of the session, we have had a great time today discussing. I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes. Anybody want to say anything to each other? And then Heidi will say to Farzana, you know, Farzana, what you were saying about your grandson, I am with you. I understand that situation. Give them a chance to talk to each other. It's such a wonderful thing. And also apologize in advance that you're going to have to cut some people off, because you will have to cut some people off and they will be offended, some of them. By Zoom, I always recommend try to get them talking as soon as you can. Otherwise, you're teaching people, if you talk on and on at a group for 15 minutes, they're going to learn, oh, this Zoom meeting is the kind of Zoom meeting that I don't need to talk. I'm going to sit back. I'm not talking. So you get them to talk in the first maybe 5-10 minutes so that they learn, oh, this is interactive. They actually want me to talk. And it's so much more exciting when you get them engaged. Anybody can do a one-way lecture, Zoom or in person, but to interact and share group communication is a whole different ballgame. Be ready to turn off the video in case somebody does something embarrassing. You don't want to shame anybody. I have had to do that once when somebody, you know, didn't turn off their video. Always ask people to contribute something. By Zoom, we have, I call it the disadvantage advantage. The disadvantage of Zoom is that we can't be in person, but the advantage is that we can see their houses. I say, oh, Amina, I can see that you have an interesting painting in the background. Can you bring it to the camera and show us what this painting is about? People can share so much about their lives. Start and end the session on a good note, okay? That's more for my own reminder, because I'm always talking about depressing topics. Tips for group communication: use the chat box a lot, but I tend not to use two modes of communication. But as Jen was saying, for the quieter people, sometimes those people love being able to write. Use slides if you have to. We use slides far too often with our senior groups. We really need to get back to normal speaking. Most seniors don't like slides. It's us service providers who think we need to put the slides up. We have to start learning, mastering the skill of public speaking without slides. Challenge yourself. Can I deliver this information 20 minutes without any slides? This is when you need your onion and you need your visual aids, because you want to keep their attention. Okay, so references from today's talk are available on request, and this is my contact details. Thank you so much. I've gone slightly over time, but I appreciate all the comments in the chat box, and thank you for the opportunity to focus on what I think is a very important topic.
Thanks, Christine. That was a very insightful presentation and very engaging. We can now open the floor up to some questions. So if anyone has questions for Christine, you can throw them in the chat, and I will moderate the chat and say any questions that come up.
Sean, I'm very curious why Sean said sings. Sean, are you singing in some of your sessions with seniors? You're singing? Whoever, can they unmute themselves, Natasha, or can they just chat by writing?
I can talk as well, Christine. No, I said, you asked if we should keep a monotone volume, and I said, well, you know, if the purpose is to keep people engaged and you want to change up your volume a little bit now and then sometimes changing into a singing voice might keep people interested and at least suddenly listen when they started to tune me out. So that's what I found.
Wow. Are you able to demonstrate this singing voice for us? Because I'd like to learn. I'm putting Sean on the spot.
I could sing a song for you if I serenade you now, but I'll make up the words as I go along. And
wow,
now you're listening to me. So I'm not sure if that was any good, but it doesn't need to be good. I'm an advocate for bad singing. So here you go.
Oh my gosh, I love that. You know, you just taught me a new skill, so I can just say, you know, guys, I've been thinking, what a wonderful world. Thank you. Thank you for your anyone want to unmute and share something?
We're being a very shy group today, I think, Christine. Thank you so much. You've got so many wonderful ideas and tips for us. I think the common theme that so many people wrote about and you spoke throughout was respect for the individual in the way that they would like to be respected. Is such a beautiful thought, and I think a lot of the people we do work with work towards that, but you've given us lots more to think about. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Lots of positive feedback for you in the chat, Christine. So thank you again.
Okay, so if we don't have any questions, we can move on to our networking session. So we do have a little networking session that breaks up into 3 groups, and we will be using Jamboard to go over 3 main topics. So each room will have a different topic, so you can pick and choose which room you'd like to be in. The first room is for community strengths and building connections. The second room is innovating technology and inclusion. And the third room is programming and exploring the challenges. So I think we're just going to set up the breakout rooms now, and they should appear shortly. We're going to take about 15 to 20 minutes in the rooms, and then we'll come back into this main room and discuss. So now the options showed up under the participant list that the breakout sessions have started, and you can join sessions by clicking the show all breakout sessions and then joining each one of the teams.
People. And then reaching out to marginalized communities. There was a good point brought up by Jamie, just in terms of collaborating with community leaders whom are highly respected and trusted by marginalized groups. So it's in ways kind of like the middleman in terms of how to reach out to them and make it sort of a successful approach. And then digital literacy resources. Basically informing communities of what is available, for example, a digital library, and engaging even high school students or summer students who are tech savvy and need to fulfill community service hours to teach seniors on how to utilize these different resources online. And creating resources on best practices for digital literacy. So again, this was something shared previously, but translating this information into different languages would also be helpful. So those were just some points. Thank you.
Seems like a very good discussion. A lot of ideas came out of that.
Yes.
And then from room 3, from programming and exploring the challenges.
So I can be fair. Anna, if you want to add anything after, please do. So we were discussing, largely things around reaching low tech or low literate adults and the virtual initiatives that we could continue or build on post pandemic. Some of the major issues within that, and so a few suggestions came across in terms of how we in fact interact, meaning a patient approach. Thinking about having dedicated days or dedicated sessions just for the tech or the learning around the onboarding around the technology, using telephone resources and building on the activity kits program, collaborating with the Zoom sessions, having more arts-based programming to support the mental health of older adults virtually. And then definitely we talked about access to the devices and how that's a major challenge that we need to overcome. There's a lot of good, well-rounded discussion in that Jamboard. And one of the things that definitely stands out is the fact that some organizations are doing these things. Some of the organizations in our group have an initiative or we're working on one of these activities. But there's a need for more collaboration to occur to bolster and expand and scale up those programs.
Perfect. Thank you, Sean. And that is a wrap on the keynote speakers and the networking session. I'm going to bring this back to Heidi, who's going to just say a few words about the overall sessions.
Thank you, Natasha, for moderating the session today, and thank you, Christine, for the insightful presentation. Just want to share a couple of thoughts from the sessions that have come up. And again, just a reminder, you are going to be getting an evaluation. Please do complete that evaluation as we can learn for future events. As we've been saying all along, we have started a conversation. but we would like to continue the conversation. So we do hope to have your feedback for that. Again, some of the quotes you can see up here on the screen. I have been in awe of the resilience of so many seniors in successful in, oh my goodness, I can't get words out right now. Successful initiatives, Partners Without Borders. I mean, so many great comments have come back. So I really appreciate all of you who have joined us on this journey, on this conversation. Some comments here. I wish this series would not end. Great series, local, the right organization, the right spirit of inclusion, the starting point conversation. So there's so much, you know, to continue on with this journey. Again, as I mentioned before, thank you to the steering committee, thank you to the planning committee, thank you to each and every one of you who have participated in your organizations for supporting you in that. And a big thank you to all of our presenters. I think there's a slide here that shows just how many fabulous presenters we have heard from over this series. So again, a huge thank you to all of them. And I would like to also, you know, thank again Sheridan College, the Region Appeal, and the Community Response Table for supporting this conference, and all of the organizations listed below who supported their all of us who were on the planning team in our time. I would like to call upon Ray. I believe I saw Ray in the audience from our steering committee to offer a few words, if you're available.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Heidi. You've covered it extremely well, so I'm going to focus a little bit differently. I first want to thank Heidi and Shan for the tremendous co-leadership that they've taken on this. I think back to when we were thinking about what are we going to do here? Is it going to be a one-day conference, workshop? And then we threw it off to the planning committee, which was clearly the right thing to do. And they came back with a 5-part series. And I thought, wow, that's really aggressive and really great. And obviously they have pulled this off in spades. It's clear to me, just being part of the closing remarks. And the tremendous experience and the work that you folks did together and the sharing and collaboration seems very clear to me. The topics have been of keen interest. I think it's generated lots of really good ideas and potential partnerships and relationships that people have gained throughout the 5-part series. So there has been so many benefits by doing it in this way. So I just want to thank the two of them, particularly, of course, Sheridan, for picking up the responsibility and doing a tremendous job with the IT and sort of back office infrastructure to enable all of these good communications to happen. And the last point being is the community response table and the Region Appeal who started all of this. When you really think about it, it was them 15 months ago who created the community response table, which coming out of that, of course, with the Seniors in Isolation Committee, and then ultimately this idea about holding a conference or events during the month of June for seniors. So it really is a great credit to them. There is, just so you know, a committee you might be aware of that is working now with the region closely. We've had one meeting and moving into our second meeting to have a look at some thinking around how will we transform the community response table into 2022. So there's already discussions well underway. So I think I would say we're in good hands. The region has done a great job, and congratulations to all of you for taking the time, providing excellent input into this process, and for being part of this over the last 5-part series. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray, and thank you, everybody. We look forward to the next time we're able to all get together. And until then, continue on with the great work you're all doing to reach isolated seniors, and let's continue the conversation. Have a great day.